In continuation of my class of menstrual disorders, today we'll talk about leiomyomas. Okay. So, what is leiomyoma? So, in general, we call it as fibroid or a myoma or a fibromyoma. So, usually it is addressed. All of you know, are familiar with the term with fibroid. They are slow growing tumors and take 3 to 5 years to be clinically palpable. It's a benign tumor. It's a benign uterine tumor, most commonly seen in gynecological practice. So, the fibroids, I already discussed this. We find this in 5 to 20% in the reproductive age group. So, what are we going to learn today? The types of fibroids, the secondary changes in fibroids, how a fibroid patient present with the clinical presentation, how do you investigate and manage a case of fibroid disease. And that is regarding uterine fibroids. So we'll go through cervical fibroids and hopefully complete about colics also in this class. So this is the definition of a uterine fibroid or a leiomyoma. It's a benign tumor and it's a tumor from smooth muscle tissue and originates from the smooth muscle layer of the myometrium of the uterus. So what are the causes for this fibroid or what is the etiology behind it? Sometimes there is etiology is not known. It arises from the smooth muscle cells of the myometrium. Genetic basis is found out, monoclonal origin, various growth factors like epidermal growth factor, interstitial and tumor-like growth, beta tumor-like are all attributed to the cause for, and it is mostly an estrogen-dependent tumor. So, risk factors that means who are most susceptible to or who are going to have these factors are chances of having a fibroid. That is increased age, early menarche, nulliparity, obesity. Obesity, there is more fat, there is more estrogen, as it is an estrogen dependent tumor. Nulliparity, there is no suppression of these hormones, progesterone and estrogen, which is a factor which prevents occurrence of a fibroid. So hypoestrogenic state, anything with high fibroid, sometimes family history also is a risk factor. If it is in the family, then can have. See. Protective factors, late menarche. So there we have seen early menarche. Because it is a hormone dependent tumor. Multiparity, menopause. So when there is suppression of ovulation and this, and smoking is also attributed to protective. So let's go through the anatomy. It's a typical myoma, Bell's circumscribed tumor with a capsule. So it is firm. That means the tissue is pushed and it forms a capsule. That's its forms. It is firm in consistency. The cut surface is pinkish white and has a bird appearance. The capsule consists of connective tissue which fixes the tumor to the mammary. The vessels that supply blood to the tumor lie in the capsule and send radial branches into the tumor. So, as I told you, this is a back section of a fibroid. You can see the whorled appearance. This is the whorled appearance. You can see this round. And it is surrounded by a false capsule formed by the uterine muscle. That is due to the compression, because the smooth muscles proliferate like so much that it compresses the uterine muscle. This is how the histological picture of a fibroid is. Smooth muscle cells and connective tissues. So, the types of fibroids. We go to uterine fibroids. Fibroids occur in the body of the uterus and it also in the cervix. So, body of the uterus, mostly interstitial fibroids. Interstitial fibroids, 15% are submucous, sessile. That means they don't have a pedicle. It just sits on the uterus like that. If there is a small connection or a pedicle, it's pedunculate, submucous tumor. Then 75% they remain intramural or interstitial in the mammary. Subserous fibroid at 10%, they always have a pedicle. And sometimes the blood supply is cut off or the pedicle becomes very thin and it moves freely in the abdomen. Then it is called a parasite. Or it is pushed into the broad ligament. Then comes so most of the subserous broad ligament fibroids are subserous. So depending on the site of origin, 90% of fibroids arise from the body. That is the corporeal fibroids. Only 3% occur in the cervical region. That is the cervical fibroid. So the distribution of myoma we have already gone through. It's intramural, submucous, and subserous. So, according to the location of the uterus, this is how a submucous mucosal fibroid looks like. Intramural, within the wall of the uterus. If it is having a pedicle and outside the uterus, it is a subserosal fibroid. So how does it grow? How it grows? It is mostly estrogen dependent tumor, and the tumor is found to have a lot of estrogen and progesterone receptors in high concentrations. That's why it is rare before menarche, and as there are no hormones acting after menopause, the size of the tumor decreases. Again, under progestational effect in pregnancy because high progesterone. Again, during pregnancy, fibroids enlarge. So, during the course, some changes occur in the fibroid. Some shrink and become invisible. There is hyaline degeneration, cystic degeneration, some calcareous degeneration, red degeneration, and rarely sarcomatous changes. So this is whitish part. You look, it's a hyaline degeneration, and this is our red degeneration looks like. So Complication. Mostly a subserous fibroid. It can twist the pedicle and cause torsion. And patient may present with acute epilepsy. There may be sometimes hemorrhage into the center of the fibroid. So most of the submucous fibroids, they might get infected, and because of exposed area to the vagina, there can be ulceration. If a huge fibroid, it distends the vagina and it can pull the fundus of the uterus along with it outside, and uterine inversion can happen. There can be changes, endometrial carcinoma, endometrial and myelofibrosis. There, along with fibroids, there's sometimes adenomyosis too. And post syndrome, pseudo-Mead syndrome. It's a syndrome where there is ascites and right-sided hydrothorax. It usually, Mead syndrome is we see with the ovarian cancers, but this is happens with the fibroid, so it's called pseudo-Mead syndrome. So look at the red degeneration along with the gravid uterus. And look, this is a nice picture where with the fibroid, the fundus has come out of the introitus, causing inversion. The fundus has to be here, right? But it has inverted along with the weight of the fibroid. So this is one complication. This is calcifications occur in the fibroid. Look at the torsion of the pedicle. They can become gangrenous, then later infection. So how do you diagnose? Proper history taking. I've been repeatedly in every class explaining you how to take a history, proper examination and investigations. Let's go through the clinical features. So we started with abnormal uterine bleeding, and we know the types of abnormal uterine bleeding that occurs. Because of the size of the fibroid, there can be pelvic pressure and pain, and because of compression. And depending upon the location of the fibroid, there can be reproductive dysfunction. So these are the symptoms. So the kind of a abnormal uterine bleeding occurring is menorrhagia, polymenorrhagia, menorrhagia. Why does this happen? Because the fibroid, there is increased uterine surface. The surface area of the uterus is increased. The vascularity is increased. That's why there is abnormal uterine bleeding. So if infertility, if the depending on the location of the fibroid, near the cornual end, if the fibroid is present, then it will be blocking the tubes and patient can have infertility. Huge fibroids also prevent conception. Pain, pleasure symptoms, and on inspection, there can be abdominal, vaginal discharge. Vaginal discharge can happen. Then these are so menstrual these are the same symptoms. Uterine inversion by pressure. There can be pressure symptoms like on the viscera, bladder, ureter, and acute clinical conditions occur with Because of the pressure of the fibroid, there can be acute retention of urine. When there is red degeneration of fibroids, patient can have severe abdominal pain and fever also. Retention of urine, torsion of a pedunculated fibroid like subserous fibroid, and the hemorrhage occurs, the blood supply is cut off, or the small capillaries bleed into the fibroid. Then in sarcomatous changes, these all cause severe abdominal pain. Very rarely, thromboembolism occurs. Usually, how the physical signs are, on inspection, you can see the patient is having pallor. You have to look for pallor and detect if the patient, because she'll be having blood loss. Then on palpation, on inspection also you can look, there will be an abdominal lump, it's a huge fibroid. It has well-defined margins and fibroid it is firm in consistency, smooth, and having a bossy surface. The tumor is mobile from side to side, unless the ascites occurring is very rare. When you do a bimanual examination, in gynecological diagnosis, I have explained you all how to do a bimanual examination. So in a bimanual, you can feel an enlarged uterus. There can be multiple fibroids, single fibroid but huge fibroid. Cervix will move with the movement of the mass. If you push the mass downwards, then you can feel the cervix. If there's a broad ligament fibroid, then the uterus is pushed to the opposite side. Uterine fundus cannot be. So as I told you, what happens in inversion? Along with the weight of the fibroid, the fundus is pulled down. So when you palpate, you can't feel the uterine fundus. If it is a fibroid polyp, the cervix is open. You find the cervical os is open. So these are all the differential diagnoses of a fibroid. So mostly hematometra, pyometra, it's all because of enlarged uterus. Adenomyosis, bicornuate uterus, ectopic pregnancy, chronic variant tumor, chronic invasion. Sometimes a full bladder also appears like any tubo-ovarian masses also. They all mimic a fibroid. So, by investigation, we have to, by history and examination and with investigations, we will come to an accurate diagnosis. So, how do you diagnose? Investigate. So, because of anemia, all the routine blood things we will be doing. Preoperative, suppose preoperatively also we will be doing hemoglobin, CBC and rest of the things. Similar way we will be doing. Then ultrasound. Ultrasound, how it is a well-defined rounded tuba and it is hypoechoic. And if there is any cystic spaces, then some degenerations are happening. So, three-dimensional ultrasound is helpful to know the site and type of fibroid, whether it is submucous, subserous. Doppler ultrasound shows vascularity of the uterus. A 3D ultrasound locating the site and type of fibroids. So this is also, we can do hysterosalpingography and sonosalpingography. This is how the saline is instilled with the enlarged uterus because of the fibroid. So the hysteroscopic picture of fibroids, submucous fibroids. Then DNC, dilatation and curettage, to rule out any associated endometrial cancer. Look at the laparoscopic picture of a fibroid. Okay, these are the submucous fibroids, interstitial fibroids, and a radiography, a pelvic X-ray showing a huge calcified fibroid. This is the MRI. You can look at the fibroids. This is also an MRI picture. And look at the huge fibroids. So how do you treat? There is an expectant management, medical management, non-surgical management, minimal invasive surgery. What is expected? Wait and observe for 6 months. So medical treatment, Mirena controls hemorrhagia provided the uterus is not enlarged beyond 12 weeks. So only medical treatment, how does it help? It helps to prevent the menorrhagia and helps to shrink the fibroid before surgery. If it is an older woman, anyhow she is going to attain menopause. If you give her for some time medical treatment, when she attains, the fibroid will automatically shrink and she can avoid a surgery. Then you have to give iron therapy for correction of anemia. So these are the drugs. So let us go through it. So antifibrillary, this is the medical treatment. Antifibrillary, it's tranexamic acid, 1 to 4 grams. It decreases blood loss, correct anemia, but size it has no action of it. It's only to control the bleeding. GnRH agonist. It decreases size and uterine volume in 6 months. What are the disadvantages? It is hypoid rebound. Later when you stop again, the size might increase. Seedling fibroids can be missed and it's very expensive. 30% size decrease in 3 weeks. Disadvantages? No. Antidanazole. Volume and no regrowth. But it has disadvantage of androgenic effects like hirsutism and all. Progesterone, mifepristone, 25 to 30 milligrams. So, surgical management, myomectomy. So, this is removal, only the fibroid is removed, leaving the uterus. This is a myomectomy screw and this is a bony myomectic clamp. So, the screw is twisted into the fibroid and it's pulled out. And only the fibroid but for saving the uterus. We can do vaginal hysteroscopic and laparoscopic myomectomy. These are the pictures of a laparoscopic myomectomy. Then uterine artery embolization. So this is how the procedure into the femoral catheter. It is injected and PVA particles. It blocks the supply and help in shrinkage of the. So Laparoscopic guided laser, these are the other surgical methods. Hysterectomy. Hysterectomy, you know, you can do it as total abdominal hysterectomy, vaginal hysterectomy, laparoscopic, as I said, vaginal hysterectomy. So, what is the advantages and disadvantages of medical and surgical treatment? Advantages: avoids anesthesia and surgical risks. Cures meningitis, controls anemia, gives reduced size of tumor, therefore less operative bleeding and allows anesthesia. Allows laparoscopic myomectomy by reducing vascularity and size. Remove fibroids and cures symptoms in one sitting. Improves fertility in 40% cases and risk of malignancy eliminated. Disadvantages: side effects of the drugs do not allow treatment over definitive period. Sometimes treatment is failed, symptoms and regrowth of tumor occurs. After giving medical therapy also, sometimes surgery may be required. So what are the disadvantages of surgery? For any surgery, it is risk of anesthesia, post-operative lesions. Here also, if the fibroids are removed, then persistence of meningitis 5 to 10 due to condition. So this is how we manage the fibroids. So body fibroids, depending whether they are symptomatic and asymptomatic. Let's go through the asymptomatic. So if patient is asymptomatic, size is less than 2, the uterus size is less than, or fibroid size less than 12 weeks, and diagnosis is certain. Every 6 months you have to follow up, and if the size increases, symptoms appear, you do surgery. Size is same, no symptoms, just follow up. More than 12 weeks, then you have to go for surgery. Unexplained infertility or miscarriage or a penetrated fibroid. If symptomatic, give medical therapy. Otherwise, surgery, you know, it is myomectomy. You can do myomectomy with the endoscope or open laparotomy. Endoscopy, laparoscopic myomectomy, or hysteroscopic resection of a, if it is a submucous myoma. The other treatment surgical modalities are hysterectomy, myolysis, electroporative, laser, and embolotherapy. Cervical fibroids, if it's supravaginal, myomectomy or hysterectomy. If it is vaginal, myomectomy or polypectomy. So this is how we manage. Asymptomatic observation with regular follow-up. Size should be less than 12 weeks. Uncomplicated pregnancy with fibroid. If surgery, size more than 12 weeks, corneal fibroid. So when do you go for surgery in asymptomatic case? Pedunculated corneal fibroid. Pregnancy with torsion of pedunculated fibroid. Symptomatic hormones to shrink the fibroid surgery, uterine artery embolization, myomectomy, lap myomectomy, myomectomy. MRI guided ablation, total or subtotal abdominal, vaginal, hysterectomy, lap hysterectomy. Cervical, whether vaginal, you simply remove vaginal polypectomy or myomectomy. Lap MRI guided myolysis. Vaginal hysterectomy, total abdominal hysterectomy. We'll go through the cervical fibroids. So uterine fibroids we have completed. You remember the 3 Types of fibers, ciliculus, intramural, and substrates. Then cervical fibroid. This is how a hysteroscopic picture of a single cervical fibroid. This is the cervical. In 1% of all fibroids. Depending on the length, there is anterior cervical fibroid, posterior lateral, or central cervical. So symptoms: chronic pelvic pain, menstrual irregularities, dyspareunia, pressure symptoms, anterior cervical protrusion symptoms like frequency or even retention of fluid, depending on the size. Retention is more due to pressure than the elongation of fluid. Rectal symptoms are more in posterior cervical fibroid. Lateral cell causes vascular obstruction, which may lead to hemorrhoids and edema. Maternal dystocia, though rare during pregnancy. Ultrasound, most readily available and is least costly. It is reasonably reliable for evaluation of uterine volume less than 375/60 and containing 4 or fewer fibroids. This transvaginal sonography sensitivity is 80, specificity is 90%. Saline infusion sonography is gold standard. Sensitivity 90%, specificity 89%. MRI, submit are best identified with MRI. It also evaluates the proximity of fibroid to the bladder, rectum. CT scan to rule out the other. Differential diagnosis: cervical polyp, pedunculated submucous fibroid, cervical cancer, lymphoma of the cervix, extremely rare, melanoma of the cervix, usually are rare, usually involves the vagina. How do you treat a cervical? Same, depends on the size, location, and the desire for fertility. If it's a huge tumor, preoperatively GnRH analogs are given for 3 months, which facilitates surgery and improve the hemoglobin status. In vaginal part, fibroids is a tumor, is sessile, myomectomy, and pedunculated with pregnant polypectomy is done. For lateral fibers, if patient is desirous of fertility, myomectomy may be attempted. For central fibroids, hysterectomy is required, which may be done laparoscopically or by open surgery or by vaginal growth if the size of the fibroid is. Polyps. Polyp is a clinical entity referring to a tumor attached by a pedicule. So types of polyps are benign and malignant. Endometrial, endocervical, fibroid polyp, and placental. Malignant, secondary changes in a benign polyp. So this is how a polyp looks like. See, you look at the pedicule. These are single and multiple pink swellings, 1 to 2 centimeters with a pedicule. Look how an endometrial polyp looks like. Endometrial polyps mostly arise from the hyperplasia of the endometrium, some of the endometrium protruding into the uterine cavity as polyps. Risk factors: HRT, tamoxifen therapist who are taking tamoxifen therapy, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and increased age. This is a cervical polyp. The polyp arises from the endocervix. Stimulus a hyperestrogenism. Any infection causing chronic irritation and localized vascular condition causes a cervical polyp. This is a fibroid polyp. So, Fibroid polyp is always due to extrusion of a submucous fibroid into the uterus. The uterus contracts to expel the polyp out. It may arise from the body of the uterus or from the cervix. Cervical fibroid polyp arises from the ectocervix and from the posterior bone. It sometimes big to distance the vagina or even comes out of the pimple, confusing the diagnosis of a uterine bleeding. This is a cervical mucus polyp. Mucus polyp may arise from the mucous membrane of the cervical canal. They form a swelling about the size of a pea and in rare cases may become as big as 2 centimeters in diameter. Clinical features: AUD, postcoital bleeding, continuous bleeding, excessive vaginal discharge, same infertility and abortion. How do you diagnose? General examination, perspective, size and color pale and irregular. Attachment of a pedicle is usually. Vaginal examination, the uterus may be bulky, the cervix may be patulous, and the tip of the polyp is felt distinctly outside the external mass. TDS, saline infusion sonography, hysteroscopy, examination under anesthesia, and the sound test. This is how ultrasound you can see the polyp. This is a hysteroscopic picture of a submucous polyp. What is placental polyp? Formed from retained placental tissue causes secondary hemorrhage, BPH, or intermittent vaginal bleeding following an abortion or a normal delivery. So, how do you manage? Dilatation and curettage. Just dilate and curate and scrape the polyp. Hysteroscopy, under the guidance of a hysteroscope, removal of multiple may be desirable to ensure complete removal.